I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, Imard, Bruce Lee.
And Steve Newby.
This is the original Five Fingers of Death right here.
But my hands are registered as lethal weapons. That means we get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
Record. We're going.
Oh, you went into the red then, James.
Did I? I shouldn't because I'm in.
Well, maybe it's because you were shouting.
Probably. I think so. Maybe I'm in a good mood because we're on pod 20.
Pod 20, let's celebrate.
I don't know why we.
I think we should celebrate with a bit of Kung Fu instead of just talking about myself all the time.
All right, then. Maybe we should. That's therapy. It's therapy. It's good.
Well, that was therapy the other day. I just felt like it. But you do see, I mean, it does open your eyes when you look at things in that kind of perspective, the situation and whatever.
Well,
But, I kept it to myself for 12 years. Or is it 12 years to 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. 8 to 10 years. So,
well, all two of our listeners are probably thinking should have hung on a bit longer. Right, guys, welcome to podcast 20. Yes, 20 episodes. God knows how many hours accumulated of us talking absolute crap, but we'd just like to thank you for sticking around. That means so much to us. My name's James Still, and I'm joined with my teacher of many years, Mr. Steve Newby, all the way from Canada. How you doing, Steve?
Great, thank you.
Great, yes, very good.
That was my Canadian accent.
Was it?
I'm still learning how to call a path or a pavement a sidewalk. Bloody zebra crossings, crosswalks.
Oh, well.
Stuff like that.
Okay, all right.
And a bum bag is a
fanny pack. Yeah, but they died 25 years ago, don't you know?
Well, yeah, luckily.
Are you still wearing one? Are you still rocking one?
We've got one in the drawers.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, right, let's just get straight into it because I want to talk about. Oh, do you know what? I was going to get straight into it, but it occurred to me the other day that you're like Marty McFly, right? And from the Back to the Future films, because like in the Back to the Future films, Marty McFly was like trying to battle against like being erased from existence. You're exactly the same, but in martial arts. I can't tell you the amount of Facebook posts and stuff like that on that hark back to the old days, particularly in Scotland and whatnot, and not a single picture of you, not a single mention of you. I'm like, hang on a second, what's going on? Were you? I mean, am I missing something here? Am I like on the wrong ship?
Well,
here?
when they kind of took all that, they obviously didn't want to. I suppose it's partial guilt, and they just, I don't know, they do what they want.
It's just quite funny.
It is funny because in reality, and I think that probably hurts people when they do things like that, is that they can't eradicate history. They can't take it away. It's always going to be there. Everything they learned, everything they did, everything they earned was thanks to me. So it's like there's nothing that they can do about that, and except eradicate my photograph.
Wow. Yeah. No. Well, I
was going to say I do get letters, or I did until I just told them to go forth and multiply. I did get letters from them how great I was and all that, And I think I've kind of dug my own grave, because when someone does something like that to you, and then you end up telling them what for, I guess they just go, oh no, I'm not going to get to contact him again, and then of course I disappear. Marty McFly comes to light, I should say. Disappear out of there, and they thank all their instructors that have taught them over the years, but fail to mention the previous 20 years.
Anyway, listen, I just thought I'd mention that to start with, because we just said, we won't talk about that, but now we just did.
Well, the most important thing, we're talking about Kung Fu, and we're talking about future of Lau, and we're talking about the concept of Lau, and anybody who wants questions about Lau. This is important to me. It's not about. I think with this lockdown and everything, it's kind of brought home to me how important it is for people to sort of get information when they can't necessarily go to a class, and sometimes even when they go to a class, maybe they haven't got the kind of information that they can otherwise get. So we've all got to start somewhere, instructors included. So as an old fogey, veteran instructor, been teaching for a long time. I guess it's great to get that opportunity to get information, but also it's great because you can actually turn around and argue with me, because that's the one thing I love doing with people, making a good point. And when you talk about different concepts or different ideas of other martial arts, and they say, you don't understand the way we do things and so on, it's got nothing to do with whether I understand it. It's got to do with simple science. It's as simple as that. Tactics and strategy, science, and techniques.
Yeah.
And if you're doing stuff like that, that don't work, then I want to know about it.
It's like the biggest problem because obviously I've got quite a few people I follow on Facebook and whatnot, and more so to keep an eye on people. That's kind of me, but I see a lot of these instructional videos, and we're no different. We put stuff out there, but we don't, we've not done it really during the lockdown that much. But the biggest thing I think is the biggest question you need to be asking them, which nobody does, is why. Just simply why, And I think a lot of these people, certainly the Taekwondo lot, and what I mean is the technical syllabus, and I use the word technical very loosely there, within sort of the Taekwondo, from what I have seen. Now I'm talking about Taekwondo in the West Midlands.
It's always going to be it's going to be a specific
That's
group,
what I'm talking about. So I'm not generalizing, but if the shoe fits. But mind you, they could say the same about Kung Fu. So, I would totally, understand their point of view. But from what I see, the technical syllabus that these people are putting out, it is nowhere near the standard that we kind of profess to. I say we profess to throw out there, and I'm pretty damn sure we do it. Like I said, no one's going to be the best fighter in the world. No one's going to be the best technician in the world. But when people aren't asking the question why, and certainly what I see with a lot of these Taekwondo videos, it's just utter, anyway, I don't know. But so
I know what you're saying, and it's really important for us to emphasize that every single style has quality in individuals that really work hard to perfect their style. Now, whether or not it's scientifically sound, that's a matter for conjecture. Different people have different ideas, and then on the other hand, of course, you've got the majority of people who put videos out there. They put it out there at the stage that they're at that point in time, and probably you can guarantee that in a year or two's time they're going to regret putting it out. Because so many people do really terrible demonstrations or really terrible videos. I mean, I know in my time I've done some awful videos. Oh, well, not videos, but demonstrations, and someone's probably videoed it. The thing is, unfortunately, it's in a crowd anyway, so people have a lot of memory. I've done some really stupid things. I definitely could guarantee that. But everyone does, as we've said before. But it isn't about when we discuss like this. It isn't about what I'm doing. It's just the experience I have. So people can either take it or leave it, and it's great when they dispute it. Okay, if someone disputes what I'm saying, then that's better than just listening to it and just going off on a rant. I'm not doing it specifically because, I'm professing to be great. I'm not saying that I'm great. What I'm saying is I have some experience, and when I'm listening to people argue my point, it's brilliant because I can get, as long as they've got technical value in their argument, then we all learn from it. So not just me, but everyone learns from it.
Do you know what got me thinking the other day? Because we've started on the podcast, the last one. For quite a few, we've been talking about the Lau Gar syllabus, but and I want to continue on that with this one. But what got me thinking the other day is, there's a lot of people. Do you think they end up hiding in the sanctity of syllabus, as opposed to the actual understanding of the martial art itself?
Well,
do you know what I mean?
I mean, I did have a letter or an email or a message or whatever from someone who was talking about. We talked about it last week, I think, or last podcast, talking about the Chinese. What you call it? The
terminology.
The terminology. That's it. And obviously, and my, the kind of answer, because people will say, yeah, but it's just a load of crap and all that kind of thing. Well, no, I don't. Although I'm not a follower, okay, of Chinese terminology for the sake of Chinese terminology. Okay, right. I'm not interested in it for that reason. I don't want to particularly, take a class and then say, right, this does that, and the dragon climbs up the mountain and, farts in the river or whatever. So I think it has a place. It has a place. I mean, what I wrote back, because they kind of says, well, it's bullshit, isn't it? Now I think they probably believed in it, and I don't want them to be put off by what I say, but my answer was basically it has a place for enthusiasts who want to feel they're learning traditionally, okay, but it doesn't guarantee that they are. Of course it doesn't. And as for me, the way I'm concerned, I'm as far as I'm concerned, I've seen so many useless teachers in so many arts, and that's inverted commas, that it kind of makes me not want to be in that category. Rather offer an art as a work in useful style, right? That's the way I like to see it, than be labelled just another kung fu, because kung fu has got a name because of I mean, you take a look at not just the nationals, but look at any videos and that. They've got these people doing wushu, and don't get me wrong, they are absolute amazing, absolute brilliant gymnasts and throwing themselves all over the place. But where does gymnastics stop and martial arts start? You can't see it, and people want to learn that because they see it's beautiful, and they want to learn it, and to the detriment of the technical and useful aspects of their style. Because technology, in other words, a fighting ability doesn't necessarily look pretty, right? It just doesn't look good. It's simple, it's almost invisible, it's done in such a short movement that it means nothing in the aesthetic sense. And so when you come to demonstrate your art, there's nothing really to demonstrate unless you are having a fight. Now, if you're having a fight, that's where it becomes a demonstration of skill, and you can see how it then works. But if you take that away and start throwing yourself around so that you then look athletic, dynamic, and sort of I don't know, just gymnastical, if that's a word, gymnastic, then I think you're missing the point, right? You're trying to
some people think the point, we all have different reasons for doing it, right?
Yeah. But okay, you're missing my point then in that case. My opinion, and that's all it ever is on these podcasts. Unless someone wants to give me their opinion, it's always going to be my opinion. I mean, I know you give me your opinion all the time. So it's just a matter of, like, my opinion. So, look, if it works in the fight, then it's a good martial art. If it's going to be used to demonstrate, to try to win over new students because they think it looks amazing, like the movies, and they want to be able to fly and they want to be able to do these dynamic movements, unfortunately, you're never going to get fighters joining, because fighters have got a different sense of reality and they're not interested, which is why Kung Fu has the bad reputation, because the people who want to fight don't want to throw themselves around like that, when they can, even without learning martial arts, they can see the flaws in it, they can see the naivety in it.
Well, the flaws according to them, though, but because I could make the argument that athleticism and beautiful forms, to a point, has a place.
Yeah, that's true. But if you imagine someone jumping up and doing a flying kick, and you've got the skill of, or the let's say the attitude of a fighter, you're going to close that gap before they even get off the ground.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes obsolete. And then anything they do becomes obsolete, because the fight should be over by that time.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with what people see as a martial art, and what martial arts actually is. Or when I'm talking martial arts, I'm always going to talk Kung Fu.
Yeah, but when you say it becomes obsolete, now this is just me putting out my thoughts on it. When you start saying things, it becomes obsolete, because that's the mentality of a fighter. That very mentality has led to the destruction and dissipation and of genuine martial arts, because people turn around and say, that don't work, I'm not going to do it. So it becomes a saturation, a la Jeet Kune Do, which is, let's face it might be a style in itself, but it's essentially predicated on the saturation of traditional martial arts, because they've gone, I don't like this technique from Wing Chun, and I don't like this technique from Taekwondo, I don't like this, I don't like that, so I'll forget training.
No, I think that's a different situation. I think if you're looking at martial arts and okay, fair enough, I understand that an individual who may not like a particular technique doesn't like that technique because of its range in comparison to their size, their weight, and their attitude, their age, and so on. I do appreciate that some people will look like that, but that's not learning the whole style. Then that's when they're dissipating the style. I'm not talking about the style itself. I'm talking about where people will throw out moves, flamboyant moves, that have no place in a fight scenario, where they will sort of make it look pretty in order specifically to make it look pretty, where it's never going to reach a target, where it's it's dynamic in the sense that it's jumping up, doing 3 kicks in the air before you land. That is absolutely amazing. It's very athletic. It's very skillful. But if the target's moving and it's got brains, and he's not going to stand there while you prepare yourself for this jump, he's going to take. Basically, my attitude is, like, I was always good at sweeping when I did competition and in general fighting. I was always good at sweeping, and I always knew when the person was going to move, and all I did was not be where I should be. In other words, the most important thing is, when you do a sweep, is that your intention is to stand where your opponent is standing. That's where you end up, right? And so if you move towards the opponent, even if he doesn't move, if he's trying to get you from that place, you end up standing where he should have been, but now he's flying, now he's falling over, now he's been swept. Okay, and if he steps back, he's just giving you more space to do it. So it doesn't make any difference, right? If he can't see me coming because he's not looking at my feet, and I'm playing around with my hands or doing something else, or maybe completely fainting, he doesn't get to see it. That's that's what is invisible. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I mean by visibility.
Yeah.
So if he's going to throw himself around and I can just move in, I mean, I've told you about the fight with the Thai boxer, and he came with all his. Did I not?
No, go on. I don't think you mentioned it on the
well,
podcast.
He came with all his mates. They were doing self-defense. I was doing a school project for something.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've mentioned it. Anyway, yeah, cut a long story short, I did a course at a school, and it was a self-defense course, and obviously people, you know, they're learning the self-defense, but they're probably thinking, just like anybody would think, you know, from these flamboyant martial arts, oh, it doesn't look great, it's just too simple. And so, you know, you started getting people, oh, is there more to it and whatever. And I just says to the teacher, let's do kickboxing. We'll call it kickboxing. We'll get them in there, get them jumping around, punching pads and all that sort of thing. The following week, this guy turned up with his own pads, and his mate came in with a camera and said, oh, you know, I do Thai boxing, you know, I want to do this, want to do that. And he was really good. He was great. And he was doing all these jumping stuff as well. So I mean, I know that he wasn't just Thai boxing as in like ring fighting. He just wanted to show off all his stuff. So, and including, you know, jumping, spinning kicks and all that kind of thing. So as he did, you know, I knew that he wanted to fight, so we put the pads on and that just for fun. And his mate was filming it, and every time he jumped up to do a spinning kick or whatever he was trying to do, I just simply moved back out direction or out of the range, and then while he was landing, I just ran in, kicked his leg from under him. and every time I did that, his mate was just all over the place in stitches, because, you know, he was filming it. So, because this guy really thought he was good. And I mean, I never thought of myself anything, but I want to defend, you know, what I say I have to defend, or at least when I was younger, I wanted to defend physically, just to make the point, you know. So it's really important to me. I was so passionate, and yeah, he just ended up on the floor every time, and I never hurt him, but he never even got a punch off because he was too busy trying to be
busy looking good, Mr. Handman.
Too busy looking good.
What was his mate saying with the camera?
He was just laughing. Yeah. But like my daughter says the other day, what did she say? She says, you know, she told me to say this, you know, I just don't want to look cool anymore, but I can't help it.
Oh my God. Oh, brilliant.
But anyway, that's a good example of how people teaching martial arts have gone for the pretty stuff and to the detriment of a tactical awareness. And my view about Kung Fu is tactical awareness and strategic value. And for that reason, yes, as we were talking about earlier, as far as the terminology is concerned, terminology doesn't come into tactical awareness, right? But it does have a place for people who want to learn a traditional art. It has a place, but it shouldn't take the place of strategic and tactical awareness. And that's where I'm coming from. So I want to emphasize that to people, because I don't want people thinking, oh, I only know this or I only know that. You know, I've been around a long time, I've seen these things, I've learned these some bloody big, you know, the 5 animal forms and all that, and I just go, what for? So, but that's me, that's not them. They can do it, they can make big forms up, but my argument is, if you keep on bringing in big Tai Chi forms and big Wushu forms into an organization that is statistically against all other, you know, styles within, you know, the UK, if you like, one of the best, if not the best, fighting system there is in martial arts. Okay, I'm not talking about individual competition, I'm not talking about, you know, whether it's full contact, semi-contact or whatever. I'm just talking about as generalization. Statistically, it has amazing tactics, okay, and that work. It's designed to work. And now you take that away by introducing big forms. You stop learning your basics, you start learning your simple syllabus, and sooner or later you'll start deviating and start teaching these new wushu forms instead of the syllabus, because that's what you want to learn as an instructor, guess what's going to happen? Everybody forgets what real martial arts is, and they forget their basics. They don't concentrate on the strategy and the tactics and the scientific principles that make the style work. Instead, they start following this trait of big, flamboyant movements. Now, we know that when you learn Kung Fu in the beginning, the movements are large, not necessarily flamboyant, and therefore not particularly great in demos, but they are much bigger. Like we talk all the time about ABC, when you're at school, drawing big A's and so on. So, of course, they're going to become smaller as you get better at them, but you can't get better at them if you insist on making bigger and bigger movements. And that's my argument.
But you're
full stop.
You're not saying don't do jumping kicks, are you? You're not saying that.
No, but what is a jumping kick, Jeff?
No, I understand what a jumping kick is. It can be an inch off the floor, or
exactly.
A meter, 5 meters if you're flying. But what I'm saying is, but there is a place, right, for every technique, which is the way I've always learned from you. And if you've never said, don't train jump, spinning kicks and all the rest of it.
No.
There is a time in a place, the odds are so, huge that you can pull it off at this particular moment in time, blah, 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 rather than a back fist, for example. But nevertheless, if you don't train it, you'll never, ever be able to apply it, and you'll never know if you could have.
Yes. Yeah, but the point I'm making, James, is I didn't talk about techniques, in per se. I'm talking about strategies. Now, you can do any technique you want to do if you have a strategy in which it can be used. But the problem, where in Lau, you do a flying kick for a reason.
Yes.
So you will set that kick up and you will set the opponent up. Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where people will simply jump up and do kicks without any knowledge of tactics, because they've spent so long perfecting beautiful flying and movements and gymnastic movements that they no longer have an ability to create a strategy.
But that's
the difference. You see.
No, I understand that. I understand. But this is where you've got all these so-called reality-based self-defense methods invented by Tom, Dick, and Harry, who turn around and say the last thing you ever want to do is a jumping kick in a street fight, or like I had a massive argument once about hook kick in a street fight. And my argument is, if you've trained that hook kick, for example, to the point where it is fast, it is powerful, you can perform it without even thinking about it, and if the opportunity arises, why the hell not? Why limit yourself to this? And I understand this, the argument of, well, don't take your leg too high, you'll end up on the ground, this, that, and the other. But it's like, hang on a second, if we applied that to every single technique, then no one will end up doing anything.
Well, that's true. But you see, when you talk about that hook kick, it's totally down to your tactics and your training in terms of technique and the strategies that you're using to fight. If you have strategy, then you must understand that, if you understand how you can fight or how your ability could work in a fight, you have a 50% chance of winning. If you know the opponent's capability without even knowing your own, you have a 50% chance of winning. But if you know your ability and the opponent's, you have a 90% chance of winning. So that the issue there when you're using that kick is, do you know when to use it? And do you know why you should? And do you know what are the consequences that are gonna possibly happen when that individual, when your opponent is in a particular position? And if you can guarantee that you have, or nearly guarantee at least, that you have a 90% chance of that thing working, you can use it, because remember, the kicks and various other techniques are meant to be used at different angles, particularly kicks,
Yes.
not necessarily the hands, because most hands tend to be used within the central range of your motion, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is, right in front of you. Whereas kicks, you have side kicks, you have back kicks, you have spinning kicks, you have reverse turning kicks, you have hooking kicks, and so on.
Yeah.
So these things can be used. They're intended to be used at differing angles.
Yeah.
Okay, and therefore you can set people up to not even know where they are, but you can also set the heights up as well.
Yeah.
So if you think you can do a high kick, fine, you're going to take a lot longer, but if you can set it up, fine. But when you don't practice strategy and you don't understand, fighting, because you're too busy playing with beautiful movements, that's where you fall apart. Now you can have amazing movements and be a great fighter at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've seen some amazing fighters with beautiful techniques.
Oh yeah.
But they're training to fight. My argument is, when it comes to this, doing demonstration forms with Tai Chi or with Wushu, and without no detriment to them, because they have a place in demonstrations and they have a place in, whatever, exhibitions, I don't care, but you're not necessarily going to benefit if you don't train fighting. And consequently, everybody thinks, because they see all these things on the TV, or they see these people do things at demonstrations or on videos, they look at it and say, that won't work, and they're bloody right. Of course they're right. No one disputes that is not going to work. It's not going to work because it's never meant to. Okay,
Yeah.
That's why. And so you get so many, then, like you say, Tom, Dick and Harry, their club, we're just going to teach what works, self-defense, blah blah blah. I understand them totally. I know where they're coming from. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but they're missing the point. They're not looking at what traditional martial arts actually is in terms of value. They're looking at traditional martial artists who have taken it further than than the tactics and strategy. They've
Right.
taken it into the realms of demonstration and exhibition.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's what they're looking at. And they can easily argue their techniques would work better,
Yeah.
because they're totally right. They would. You don't need to do that to fight.
Yeah.
So this is where everybody's confused in what is Kung Fu. Well, Kung Fu is just a way of fighting. It's a self-defense, a practical self-defense method used for thousands of years. Don't knock it on the head just because people are starting to, they want to win demonstrations, they want to win competitions by being more and more flamboyant, so they sort of start dropping what is actually good.
Yeah, but they confuse
strategy.
the demonstrations with actual fighting ability, which is
Absolutely.
why you see them
Everybody
getting
does.
knocked around all the time.
Exactly.
And it's like, what
Yeah.
the hell? But going back to what you were saying about, the kicks and everything, the same science equally applies to just a simple back fist or a straight punch.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the opponent, you don't know yourself, there's no guarantee that just that fast, because we were talking about, I was mentioning jumping kicks earlier on, but just something like a simple straight punch, that's not going to guarantee to land if you don't know your opponent, if you don't know your own ability, and more importantly, if you don't know
you only have to look at how many times a boxer misses.
Yeah.
I mean, that boxer throws those punches thousands and thousands of times, when he's training, and they still miss. Okay, because they also train to avoid them. So if they're fighting someone who's skillful at avoiding his punches, guess what? They're not always going to hit, and it's the same with anyone.
Yeah.
Also, of course, you've got to guarantee, because you're doing it in a self-defense situation, you're not in a boxing ring where you've got gloves and where your hands are all taped up to protect your bones.
Yeah.
You're going to throw a punch, and if you haven't trained it, it's going to hurt you more than it hurts the opponent. If you catch his skull, you're going to break your fingers. So, for God's sake, it's all about training and preparation and so on as well. But aside from that, you don't need to use a fist, because you've got so many different options in an open hand. And this is another thing that people completely misconceive. he can't even make a fist, or he doesn't make a fist to punch, so therefore he can't be a fighter. That's not true. You don't. Do you need a fist to punch someone, poke someone in the eye, or stab them in the throat, or grab their groin? Do you really need that? Do you need to be able to fly 10 feet in order to do a flying kick? No, you don't. As you said, quite frankly, rightly earlier, you jump 1 inch with one leg to reach the target. It's called a flying body kick in our syllabus. It's not called a flying kick. It's called a flying body kick. Yeah. Which means your body's off the ground. It doesn't say how far, so therefore you take a step without landing it, okay, until you've basically, your kick is already at the target, which means the whole weight of the kick is on that foot. Okay, the whole weight of the body has gone forward on that foot. So it hasn't landed on the ground. It's going towards the opponent. And so that's what a flying kick is, or a flying body kick is. So for these people who think that you've got to jump up in the air and then do the kick, yes, you train that because it's dynamic and it draws crowds. Okay, it draws students, but there's got to be a time where people are taught strategy and tactics for fighting, because that is what the biggest thing that they want to do. They want to learn to defend themselves. Don't lie to them.
I want to ask the question then, so I want to bring it back onto the syllabus of Lau. Not specific for right now, but just in general terms, right? So I've got a question for you. And I wrote this down earlier on. Does having a syllabus detract from learning the style? And when I talk about the style, I mean like strategies and tactics. But equally, does not having a syllabus detract from the learning of the style? Meaning, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Right. And what I want to say is, when I talk about syllabus, I'll define the syllabus for now as, if you have any style of martial art that has a belt system or a sash grading system, whatever, we can say that in your style that's syllabus. So that's how I just define it for now. But does having a syllabus detract from the learning of the style? But equally, does not having a syllabus detract from the learning of the style? What do you say to that?
Okay, having a syllabus most definitely has to enhance the process of learning.
Right.
You have to know where you've got to. You have to understand how far someone has learned. You have to understand how well they've learned. And to do that, you need to give them something to learn. Now, if you just give people, things willy-nilly, you really don't know where you are. I want you to, I'm training to driving instruction in Canada at the moment.
Yeah.
And I have a syllabus to learn. I have word for word. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all about teaching people to be safe drivers, not just driving and passing the test, but literally being safe drivers. Now, if you don't have that syllabus, we all think we can drive safely.
Right.
But without a quick, shoulder check, without a quick look in the mirror, there's a danger. You forgot to tell them to look in the mirror. Why? Because you didn't think it was important at the time you were teaching their syllabus.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have a syllabus. You don't know whether you've told them to look in the mirror, or you don't know whether they're going to do a shoulder check at that point in time, see pedestrians crossing as they turn into traffic, to turn, in my case, left at lights. In your case, turning right at lights because you're driving on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
So you set yourself up to turn, across a set of traffic lights, in whether you're going left or right, doesn't matter, and you've got to cross the oncoming traffic, so you turn into it, thinking you've got space, but you didn't check to see if there was people crossing on the crosswalk. You have to stop now, and guess what? You're right in front of the oncoming traffic. You can't run the person over in order to get out of that. You can't reverse because there are cars behind you. What do? You're stuffed. Why? Because you never got taught at the time you needed teaching. And that is what's called syllabus. Right? Without syllabus, You've got no way of, when you're generally teaching lots of people, of course, if you were teaching an individual, you'd still need some kind of progress chart, don't you?
Yeah, okay, but then, like we've always said, that the syllabus, and I'm talking mainly about hand blocks, kick blocks, walks, and whatever. The syllabus in Lau was invented at a time when the classes were huge, blah blah blah. We all know that sort of when Master Yao was learning, there was no hand blocks and kick blocks. It was a question of use your noggin, apply it yourself. And I'm here as the teacher or whatever to make sure you're on the right path. So, so on one hand, this is what I'm saying. On one hand, you're telling me that, hand blocks and kick blocks, James, they detract from people learning, being forced, if you like, not forced, being encouraged to think about it. But on the other hand, you're saying, like you've just done now, we need syllabus to keep people on the right track. So which is it?
Yeah, we do need syllabus. Having said that, you said earlier that they were created because they were big classes.
Yeah.
So what we need is progress.
Okay. Right.
And what that means is sometimes you need to look at the syllabus and looking at the better ways of teaching. Just let's go back to the car scenario again, right? When I started to learn to drive, handbrake and everything, and all clutch and all that kind of stuff, right? A load of that stuff now, in a modern concept of teaching driving, it doesn't exist, right? Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The way to hand signals, for instance, you're going to use them now.
No.
In even taking a test in England, hand signals in a car, do they put them out?
No.
Not sure if they do.
No, I don't think they do.
No, because they're no longer necessary. Okay. They do, but simply because they have certain signals with the one hand. You don't put your hand across.
Oh, I know a certain signal with the one hand. I use it quite often.
Yeah. No, that's the one finger, James.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
You're mixing them up. Okay. So, anyway, the point I'm making is, as technology changes, as progress changes, as the ability to teach, better forms of teaching, we never knew before about things like dyspraxia. We never knew things like Asperger's. We never knew things like that. My wife thinks I'm Asperger's, but I was never diagnosed with it. And I just got a split personality.
You think I'm bipolar?
Yeah.
Oh God, there's a lot of diagnosis coming from your neck.
Yeah, we're all doctors, aren't we? We're all doctors. The point is, both bipolar, Asperger's, dyspraxia, dyslexia, all these things didn't exist in the big scheme of things when we were teaching people at school. When we were being taught at school, they were just disruptive kids. ADHD, they were just disruptive kids, and they got a slap. Nowadays, they get their own class.
Yeah.
It's just progress, James. So when it comes to the syllabus, it changes with progress, and I think there is a good argument for altering the syllabus to suit the size of classes today, and there are certain things that people don't necessarily need. Having said that, often people are limited how they're teaching. Again, it depends on and remember, in martial arts, there's no quality control for teachers. There's no college you can go to learn how to teach, right?
Yeah.
So for most people, it's not. Well, there probably is places where you could learn to teach better, but you don't have to do it in order to teach.
You're talking about just the academic qualifications. You're not talking about what it takes to actually teach the
right.
the unknown element, if you like.
Yeah, that's right. So, and there's no as you say, academic facility for people to go and learn how to teach martial arts. Consequently,
No,
we're a very-
there is academic facilities to go because we've been on one. We did that teaching course. Do you remember? Years ago,
but that wasn't
I'm not saying that doesn't qualify us to actually teach the martial art, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. We did go on one of those. What were they called? Bloody forgot.
Oh.
NVQ thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, you're right. But the point is, not everyone has to do those. Okay, they don't have to do them. So consequently, you have different degrees of quality in teaching. And so, for some, teaching the hand blocks is all they can do in order to they keep to that same schedule, and that's all they can do because it's the best way they can understand how to teach the syllabus. Whereas others might say, well, wait a minute, I mean, I'm not going to teach the walks up and down the room. I'm going to make them turn every 3 turns, or I'm not even going to bother doing them at all. But I think they're important, but I think they need to be changed. As far as hand blocks are concerned, all they are vehicles for learning, right? Now, if everybody decided to start teaching their own different hand blocks and kick blocks, what would happen to a national curriculum?
It would be
in an association.
Yeah, it would go out the window.
Exactly. No one would be able to grade if they were being graded by someone who's qualified to grade them, as in the BKFA Mastio grades every black sash. Okay, so or at least the panel. If Mastio's not available, there will be a panel. Now that panel needs to know where that school's coming from in terms of ability.
Yeah.
And if they can't see that syllabus being done, at least to a quality that they expect, a standard they expect, what's going to happen? It's going to fall apart. So there has to be a curriculum.
Is like, I mean, we can talk about the BKFA in terms of a standardised quality.
Yeah.
But equally, we can talk about any other organisation in martial arts in terms of standardising quality. Now, remember that martial arts, I always think that martial arts is a really kind of like a socialist thing. I don't think it's very good. Because you've got a lot of people saying, oh, you're great, you're amazing, that's great, brilliant, well done. Now go off and teach the class and, there you go. Next person, fantastic, you're brilliant, I'll grade you, yes, you meet the black sash requirements, blah, blah, blah. Now go off and go. So everybody, I think, is too, not that they're being too nice, right? But they're, when you have a situation like that where everyone's kind of afraid to be brutally honest with people, rather than say, hang on mate, what you're doing makes no sense. Now why are you doing that? Stop teaching that, that's rubbish, right? I hope you're not teaching your students like that, or hang on a second. I mean, not unlike what your attitude is, but not that you've ever said that to within the BKFA or anyone really. But what I'm saying is, when we sort of allow people, for the sake of being nice to them, to go off and teach crap, I mean that's not good, is it?
No, it isn't, and that's the problem with associations. Like I said, there's no curriculum or no standard that anyone has to reach. Apart, once they've took their black sash, it doesn't matter, or even before the black sash they're teaching, but that's nothing to do with teaching. So it's down to the individual then, and unless you can control the individuals to become teachers and have like a teachers college where everyone learns a curriculum that they're going to teach, and they're going to have to reach a particular standard, and they're going to have to be retested every so often to make sure they're reaching that standard, and their students are going to be seen to be reaching that standard, then it's always going to be like that. When I was in Scotland, teaching Scotland, for instance, every single group, because there were like 26 different areas at one stage or more, from Inverness right the way down to the borders, I had clubs. And every single group had the same uniform, but the lines down the side of the uniform, the stripes down the side of the uniform, all had different. There were 2 stripes, but they had different combinations of colours: blue and white, yellow and white, yellow and yellow, blue and yellow, whatever. It didn't matter. the fact is that each club were allocated a specific stripe colour. Now, when they came to gradings en masse, the gradings were held en masse, and you had all the senior instructors walking around, judging people, reporting if they see mistakes, rather than frighten some poor guy or some little kid to come and stand in front of a panel of like 8 or 10 people. We would go out to them, so we would have everybody training together. The atmosphere was amazing because they all were competing with each other, different groups, the white sashes doing basic horse dance and punches, competing with the blue sashes doing their punches, and so on. So they were all competing with each other, but they were all united, all the different clubs were united. Now, what the benefit of that was, I could walk around there, as could the senior instructors, and they could pick out people that were getting the syllabus wrong, okay, when they were split into groups to do certain syllabus.
Right.
So when they were split up, you could take a look at them and you could say, oh, I can see that guy's wrong. What colour is his uniform? So you look down, you see the stripe, you know exactly who is his teacher. Now, if you see 2 or 3 people doing the same thing, you know it's the teacher's fault. If you see just that one person, then you know it's then that one person's fault. So you can correct that person to a degree, and we always like to correct them at the grading, because no one wants to see anyone fail. But at the same time, if they're just bad, and the other thing, of course, is they have the wrong attitude, that's when they would fail. So the whole point was about respect, it was about quality, and so on. But if we did see 3 or 4 people incapable of doing the syllabus, we could then see the instructor and say, I notice that your instructors are doing, your students are doing this, doing that, doing the other, and very quickly we would be able to change that. And the important thing is that sometimes even the instructor didn't know he was being judged, because when it come to the senior class, which is why it was so important to have everyone come to a senior class, we could then use that problem as a topic for that class,
right?
And we would go through that part of it, and so everybody was being judged, but not realizing they were being judged.
Let me ask you a question. When you were a highfalutin, high flying, straight shooting, rootin' tootin' guardian, right? When you went to all these guardian meetings with everybody else, what was the whole point of these meetings, other than to have a conflab around a table and whatnot? I get that, but when it comes to the training, okay, did you adopt a similar sort of attitude? Would you all pick out a topic of discussion to focus on, or what? What was the sketch there?
Well, I think they had. I mean, it's a different thing. The meetings for the association were different to the meetings for training. So obviously we went to a weekend training every so often. Usually the topic was already set. The agenda was set. Maybe someone had mentioned it somewhere. This is not being taught properly, that's not being taught properly, or maybe everybody wants to learn this set or that form or those weapons. Let's go over the weapons.
Okay. So
trying to basically bring all the senior people to think in the same way and learn from the same hymn sheet, if you like. That worked, but it isn't big enough. To be fair, it wasn't big enough to affect the whole association, because it was only for the guardians, and therefore they would go back and then try and teach it to their people, but not everybody had guardians in their area. So the concept of the guardians would have kind of, it wouldn't have been enough for the association that big.
But so basically the quality control was not there in terms of from the top straight down to the bottom, if you like, because there was a few, not in every area, because there was a few chains that were broken, like lines of communication.
Yeah, there's a lot of chains broken. And also people would be left alone for years on end without any real instruction at all.
Well, you saw that in Scotland.
Well, I mean, exactly. I went to Scotland. I saw them on the summer course. That was the only time they ever got new understanding of teaching. The only time, and I mean sometimes they come down to Bransash courses, but not all of them. Obviously, only Bransashes and above came down to the Bransash course, and then you're talking a 6-hour drive. Not everyone can do that, and then get back over in the evening to have to go to work the next day. It's not always possible. So So what tended to happen was they'd go on the summer course. That's why you'd see a lot of them on the summer course. But even then, they were in two different camps, arguing. One part of Scotland didn't like the other part of Scotland, so on. So it was always, you had the Fife and the Edinburgh different.
They're all clans, aren't they? I've watched Braveheart. Jesus.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how it was. They were like bloody clans, yeah. And so I went up there, I guess, after seeing them on the summer course, talking to them, and then talking to Master Yao, and he said, well, you got to go up there, and if you go up there, you'll do this, do that, the other, and they'll all come under you, which happened. And then I kind of united the clans, if you like.
Oh my God! So there's a character in Braveheart that's based on you. I just don't know who it was.
So for 20 years, we had a really good build-up of development in Scotland from the time I've already talked about it on another podcast how bad it was, and it was 20 years of hard work.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because you wouldn't know it to watch any of the photos of you because, well, you're not there.
Well, I'm not there. I'm not on the photos. I've been erased.
You've been erased like Marty McFly. No, in terms of the way you... so, I mean, I don't want to just talk about your organisation. I'm trying to just sort of understand what makes a good association, if you like. How do you control the quality? What did you do in Scotland? You've just mentioned when you were grading, you would look at people where to, what lessons did you learn that weren't implemented within the BKFA, or what lessons from the BKFA did you learn that you implemented in Scotland to improve the quality?
I didn't know. I developed those. I mean, okay. I'm blowing my own trumpet now.
Well, just tell the truth.
I made the polarity of grading, so everybody graded under me. No one graded anywhere else unless there was a specific reason. Okay, but no, we always had gradings. We all had them. They were paid in advance. We always gave them options to regrade, etc., etc. if they couldn't pass. We always had senior classes. Yeah, it was good. And I remember having a meal with Master Yao in some restaurant, just me and him. And he says, if I had my time again, I'd do what you were doing. And how do you think that made me feel?
Wow, I bet that really...
Yeah, I
bet you couldn't walk out the door after that meal.
No, I banged my head on both sides of the door as I went out that restaurant. But honestly, it was true because, we all learn from our mistakes. And of course, all of us, including Master Yao, would like to do it differently if they had the opportunity. And of course that was the case we talked about the other podcast about an organisation of kickboxing that I joined, and he learned several times that he shouldn't have done it the way that he initially did it, and he ended up kept changing it. Unfortunately, his kind of greed got the better of him.
Yeah.
So such is life. But no, I didn't. I only applied the syllabus to Scotland. I didn't apply, and the belief in one unit, which was the BKFA. You can say that was a great achievement, but at the same time, it was kind of an undoing because I believed in the association too, and I believed in everything to do with it. And then of course when I was down south, when the cat's away the mice will play, and the next thing I know is oh, don't worry, we'll look after that for you and all that, and Bob's your uncle. I'm in Canada.
Well.
Yeah, so but we've been through that, I'm not interested in talking about that kind of thing. I'm interested in I want to see how in the future Lau Gar will again prosper, but you need to listen to the people that have that knowledge, of that teaching knowledge, and I'm not talking about how good they are at the syllabus, because that can be changed, that can be improved. We're talking about experience in building organisations and making the organisations work, and how to treat and well treat the individuals that are running those organisations for you.
Yeah.
Because they are dedicated to the one purpose, Okay, and if you change that, if you disrespect that, then you lose that loyalty, and you lose that belief, and then it impacts on the various. Remember, it might be a small country, the UK, but it's bloody big in terms of trying to organise a national organisation, and you take that away. In the future, you've got no chance to build an organisation. You have to have a central figure, and I think Mastiau was an amazing central figure because everyone believed in him.
Do you think that the BKFA's early success was because of Mastiau as that central figure? Do you think that anyone else could do that? And what I mean is, like, we've talked before about Mastiau being like, the figure where different minorities could gravitate towards him because, he was the Chinese guy and there was not any sort of systemic racism and stuff like that. So that kind of brought the organisation together at a time when things were a lot different socially than they are today. But do you think, obviously, I'm not talking about then now, I'm talking about now, Mastiau is taking a step back. Do you think that the BKFA can sort of attain that level of unity without Mastiau?
I think there are an awful lot of people in the structure of the hierarchy, if you like, that totally believe and can still take pay homage, if you like, to Mastiau and still get information. Homage. Whatever.
I'm kidding.
Homage.
Homage. Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of people there that want to, and really desperately want to get a unity and maintain a unity. But when you get people who start running their own thing and start thinking, well, wait a minute, I need this, I need that, I want this, I want that, because they're not listened to, or because their complaints go unheard, then of course you are going to get dissent, and you're going to get less, unity, and in time that will kind of become, the cracks will become much bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that people will eventually talk in a sense where they can be heard, where they are going to be listened to, and things are going to be, acted upon.
Yeah, but look, and I'm going to say this because we do this podcast. Why do you think we do this podcast? What's the reason?
I don't know. I ain't got a clue, to be honest with you.
Well, what is it? What we don't want to do is divide, right? We don't want to divide people. We want to bring people together, right? At least get them thinking. Now, we might have a different philosophy on teaching or on whatever. We might have our opinions and whatnot, but the last thing we want to do is divide the Lau Gar style. Now, the problem is you're talking about, everyone coming together and that. It's no secret that our podcast is kind of like the black sheep out there in terms of Lau Gar. And the fact is, we're the only podcast talking about Lau Gar. But we have had no support from any of the hierarchy of the BKFA. We've not had well done guys or whatever. And hey, I don't expect that. I'm not saying give us, oh great. But I'm just saying it would be nice to be in communication with some people.
Yeah.
Now, if the problem we've got then is if it's about communication and what we're doing, surely, us doing this, we've had no thanks, hardly any bugger likes us. But it's but it's true.
I don't know that, James. That's your assumption. Because we had no communication.
All right. Well,
but I do have to say, you do realise. we have got a couple of fans when I say fans, I say that
loosely,
tongue in cheek, loosely, yeah, and because they're listening and they're interested and they agree and they support. But they can't. This is the problem I'm talking about, unity.
Yeah.
They can't, be seen to support, because we obviously talk about some very controversial situations, some very controversial topics, and so it's the policy that you can't really disrespect other styles, and I don't intend to disrespect them. I only need to, call a spade, so to speak, as they say, and it's just not done to sort of diss people. But look, there are people out there teaching martial arts without any capability whatsoever, destroying the concept of, generally the martial arts in general, not just about Lau. I mean, I know there are people who are out there, calling themselves Lau and whatever, and then what's in a name? They want to keep that name for a reason. Why do they want to keep that name? Because it's a damn good name with a great reputation and a great history. That's why they want to keep the name. But the problem is they're keeping the name and not being shown out for it. They're not being called out for it. So if you're not calling them out, they're going to grow, and while you're sitting in your bubble, they're going to outgrow you. And the problem is they are outgrowing us as an organisation. They will outgrow us, and that's because you're letting them.
But I'm not being funny, but like the focus is on what we're doing, not on what they're doing. So give you an example, right? You do a reaction video, okay, on people obliterating Lau Gar, but you're too harsh because you shouldn't be talking about people like that. Why not? How is it your fault? And aren't they just shifting all the focus onto you? And meanwhile, numpty bollocks over there is proliferating, is growing. We're looking at the wrong thing. We're looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's right. They are. Well, not us. We're looking at the right thing, but sometimes people in politics think that that's not the right way to go. We should be doing it this way or doing it that way. Well, we should be doing it some way, but if you're not doing it anyway, it isn't what we do, right, that makes the other people better. It's what we don't do that makes the other people better. Right? And if we sit by and do nothing, and we don't try to promote ourselves, and we don't unite, well, we can see what's going to happen. You can call yourself. You can go down a street, okay, and you can. And I don't know if I've said this before in any podcast, but you can go down the street and look in the corner in a through a doorway, and you can see an old master teaching the most amazing techniques, right? And he's there doing absolutely perfect techniques as a demonstration to his students, and then his students are doing something. Copying it, trying to work a form, and you think, well, that's amazing, that is really amazing, I think I might join him. And then you'll walk down the street a little bit further, and you'll see another open doorway, and you'll see this guy with a set of focus pads standing there going, go, bum, 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 bum. Punch, 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 jump up, kick, this, that, the other, fat, fitness, press ups, and so on. And you'll go, wow, that's exciting, I'm going to join that club. And why are you going to join that club? Because it's here, and it's now. And you can learn straight off. You can punch a pad. You can do this. You can do that. You haven't got to learn hundreds and hundreds of, hours of training the same technique to get it perfect. And that's the problem, right? You've got to be able to have a measure of what people want and what people need. What they do is they just do what people want, and it makes them bigger because they finance themselves from that success. Now, you can't get success if you don't give people what they want as well as what they need. So you've got to provide these both things. You can't just have a club going, we do traditional martial arts and this is how it looks. Well, no one is interested in what it looks like. They want to see it work. And when you punch in a pad, you can see a punch work because it moves the pad. Okay, when you see people training a form, you can't see it work. So you've got to have an opportunity to provide both the ability to make it work against another individual, in other words, practice the form with partners, and you've got to have that, spectacular practical method of hitting a pad so that the first time you hit someone you don't break your knuckles.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to hit something. You've got to have bags, you've got to have kick shields, you've got to have equipment nowadays, right? Because you can't go out in the forest and break a tree with your shin. You can't go and punch is it a makiwari board or something like that?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and you're just going to keep on punching that? No, you've got to be able to use the technique fluidly by using it with an individual, with a partner. You've got to be respectful, which is what martial arts is all about, trying to respect the person so you don't know. But if you injure your partner, you're going to know to train with. So that's why you're using pads. In the old days, they can afford, and they had the ability to, put themselves right, with their, their ointments and, So it's not like today where, you hurt me, I'm going to sue you. So they're holding back now. They're frightened. And so, unfortunately, you've got to find a way of bringing these measures in to make your club great again. And people have found a formula nowadays which is called kickboxing, which now takes people into a completely different zone where it gives them a false sense of ability, because not all kickboxing clubs are good, right? But they're loving it, and you can just teach it just for fitness, and your room will be full, because more people want to learn fitness than want to learn martial arts. So you've got to put that into it. And that's the biggest. The first problem is people in the powers that be in an organisation will always think, we want to teach our style. No, you want to teach a style, but you need to teach people how to use it, right? That's the important thing. You've got to give people the environment where they can literally use it. Now, having competitions and stuff like that is fine, but that's only ever going to draw maybe 15% of individuals who have learned to use it, and then of course it's within the realms of sport. So you put the sticky hands together, and this is a typical example. You put the sticky hands together, watch people do sticky hands in a competition. Jesus, it's one of the worst things you can ever watch. It's awful. And so consequently nobody wants to do it, because they don't get trained it, they don't get taught it. So it's a discipline. You've got to have an activity where they're learning what they need to learn, but also what they want to learn, and then they've got to be able to be encouraged to put it together, and so they can actually use what they've learned. Right. I think that's basically what we're about, and that's why I'm not interested in frigging, the dragon flew up the cuckoo's nest or whatever. Because it doesn't. What interests me is, does that punch reach that target before that guy can see it?
Right.
And why did it do that? Was it the guy was too slow to see it, or was it because the punch was?
Do you think that attitude has served you well though over the years? Do you genuinely, honestly believe that when? Obviously, it makes sense to me because I'm your student, right? So, of course, But do you think that attitude of yours has served you well? Of course, how do you define served you well? I get that, but,
Yeah, well, it serves you well because you see the quality of students you have. And I've seen some very good quality students, including yourself. We keep on harking back to, you're not just technically you have a great technical prowess, but you also have a quality in fighting. And you did full contact with Ivan the Terrible, who believed that he was a full contact fighter, and it was a full contact organisation, and they gave him the fight, and yet not only had he never touched you in that fight, but he was left battered and bruised and half his face black and his eye closed, simply because he was desperately trying to hit you. But you proved that our tactics and our strategy and our will to make the style worked. It prevailed, and you proved it. So when you see individuals like yourself, Christ, I'm bullying you up to it.
No, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's terrible. It feels awful.
Yeah.
Just to me.
Yeah.
And I have to admit these things. But honestly, these things, when you see people like that, like yourself, and then people come along and say, someone attacked me in the street, and I did this and I did that, and it's brilliant. When you have that, it's worth thousands of students. It only takes, how many people get in that situation that often? Very few. So statistically, in comparison to the number of students you might teach, you might only ever get a handful of people who have ever been in a bad situation. But when that handful of people come to you and say, I did this, I did that, it was brilliant, and of course it's happened to me too, where I've been in those situations, and it's and you hive from it because it's just so beautiful when it works. And it's just for me, therefore, yes, my attitude has bloody worked.
Yeah.
And that's it, and it's worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing, James,
wow.
I have to say, I have never ever fought. Well, no, that's not true. I probably fought one or two individuals, but majority of any confrontations I've had outside, I've always been with more than one opponent. Always. That's a fact that I've never really thought about before, and I'm not suggesting that I've beat them all up.
Oh, you're
I've controlled them. Yeah, I've controlled the situation, and that's because I'm an arrogant git.
Yeah.
That's why. Because I have controlled that situation.
Yeah.
And I've not allowed them. But that might just be my character. That's got nothing to do with martial arts. But the fact that I felt that I could helped a lot, and so that attitude, yes, goes a long way. And I hope it does for everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many world champions you have. All I want to know is they can defend themselves.
Yeah.
And so, but the guys that really work hard in the in the competition stuff, and that they've got obviously a lot of really good, talented and arrogant individuals that can look after themselves because they're tactically training, right? They're not going out and doing that was an F wushu instead of the style they've been given, right? They've been given that style. Use the damn thing, learn it. And if you don't learn it, what are you doing there? Bloody wushu. I've got nothing against wushu. I've got a lot against wushu in a Lau Gar class.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Get back to the bloody Lau Gar. Start training Lau. Start training tactics with it, and start understanding why it works. And if you don't know why it works, get some instruction. Right? And if you can't get the instruction from your instructor, tell him to go and get some instruction, and vice versa. And they're all going up to eventually get the instruction. But don't train just because it's got a reputation. Train to make it work.
Yeah.
And,
I think the reputation though is not what it once was. So I think
no, it
we're
isn't,
all
because a lot
sort of
but that's because of the dissipation of organisation. It's because people then go off doing their own thing, and they have to figure out what they're actually doing. And then what happens? They start bringing in these things to try to make up their syllabus. You talked about other styles going, when they've run out of things to do, they come out with eskrima sticks. Well,
they do.
Guess what Lau Gar people do? They come out with friggin' eskrima sticks. They start farting around with all sorts of different styles and stuff. No, train it. Train Lau. Okay, if you're into grappling, do some grappling. That's fine. That's good. That's great to throw a little bit of grappling into it, but figure out why you're grappling, and also recognize the difficulties of grappling in a situation where there may be other people. Because once you're on the floor with one person, you've got to remember his mates are there. So, you've got to consider, the whole point of Kung Fu is to stay standing, right? Now, if you want to roll around on the floor, okay, then that's fine if you're on your own with an individual. But as soon as you're around weaponry, as soon as you're around his friends, you're in trouble.
As soon as you're around a curb, Jesus.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
But yeah, no. I mean, like I have to say, I love the idea of doing the grappling and all that. I because for me it adds another an element of another path up the mountain, all right, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like kickboxing. You take away a hell of a load of techniques and you're just left with punches and kicks, and that's your path up the mountain. So how do you make that work? Okay, fine. Let's take away the ability to punch and kick. Now you're in no man's land, or you're closer than that, so to speak.
Yeah,
then what do you do? Yeah. So it's like, it's not that you're against grappling. I know you're not.
No, I'm not
it's
against grappling.
No, it's just that you're against the false hope that it gives people in training. Because
there's two things, right? Two things about grappling, right? I've already mentioned the one.
Well,
it can only work if you're on the floor with one person and no one else gets involved.
It can only work if sorry.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is grappling is in nature part of kung fu.
Yeah.
You're doing locks.
Yeah.
You're doing throws. So all you're doing is continuing that motion, but to the ground, right? In other words, you keep the lock on the ground. You lock him while he's standing. Take him to the ground. Now you're on the floor. The only reason you're grappling is because you let go of him. So if you're holding it, there's no longer any grappling, because by the time he's hit the floor, and he should hit the floor awkwardly, not like a judo throw where he can break fall, but he's got to land on his head, and he's got to land on his head while you're locking him. And if you lock him, locking is control, right? Take away the control, just break his bloody arm, because if you break his arm, the fight's over.
Yeah.
Okay? So why are you talking about grappling? Grappling is a way of training in a sports environment where both of you are adhering to a specific rule. That is, you've got his arm in a lock, he has to give up.
Yeah.
Okay?
But it's also both of you are adhering to the same weight category.
Yeah, yes, there's that as well. But the point is, you see, is if you're holding his arm, expecting him to give up, but he finds a way out of it, now you're in trouble again.
Yeah.
So why didn't you just break his bloody arm?
Because it's a sport.
Exactly.
I get you.
I rest my case.
Yeah, I get you.
You see, as you got him down there, you've got him in a lock and you're hurting him and he has to tap the floor and go, let go, let go. No. Right? In self-defense, you get him down on the floor, you've got him in that lock, snap the friggin' arm, and now he can tap all he likes, but he ain't going to try and get you back because he can't friggin' fight anymore.
Yeah, but,
so stop giving me any bull about how grappling is better than punching and kicking. No, it doesn't make any difference. The person who gets hit and hurt is the person who loses.
Okay. But
end of story.
If like I understand what you just said, but so my argument against what you just said, because we always like to have arguments, don't we?
Yep.
How am I
I
supposed
wish
to?
Someone else would argue.
How am I supposed to train grappling if you're saying there's no point in training it?
I didn't say there's no point in training. There's no
but
point
you said
in
there's no point in the outcome. Like you're saying, oh, don't train grappling because when you got him down, you snap his arm. Like
But you are training grappling, James.
Yeah.
You're training it standing up.
Okay.
When you get him down, this is why I say that for me, in that sense, grappling would be pointless because you've done the damage on the way down.
Right.
If you're getting him in a lock now. Understandably, people will say, yeah, but we might not be in a lock, we just might be in a skirmish, we may be grabbing each other and the heaviest one gets you down and then you've got to try and get your way out of it.
Yeah.
Well, then you can't train biting the nose, you can't train ripping his ear off, you can't sticking your thumb in his eye, and you can't train punching him in the throat.
It has to be a sport, doesn't it? It has to be a sport rules. Yeah.
But the attitude towards fighting must be, tactically survival. Okay, it can't be just, well, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. So yeah, it's a fine line, and I do appreciate that people will say no, but if you, like you just said, if you don't train it, you can't learn it. Well, that's fine, but you can learn the locks standing up. Whatever you do standing up, right, you can do on the floor.
Well, the only difference
what you do
on the floor,
you can't do it standing up.
No. But the only difference is when you're on the floor, you've got the weight of that other person on you.
Yeah, gravity is against you.
Yeah.
So the only time it works is if you're a big enough person. So you go tell that to some young girl who wants to learn self-defense.
Oh, I was watching one of those Clive. What's his name? Clive. Is it Thompson? The bald-headed ex-bouncer. What's his name? I think it's Clive.
Geoff Thompson.
Jeff Thompson, there you go, Jeff Thompson. One of his YouTube video courses. I think this one was called Animal Day or something. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
So he's there. He's talking about like self-defense, and you know, like if you ever watch a Jeff Thompson thing, he presents it in a very sort of rough, raw way. You know, effing this, effing that. Right, but bear with me. So he's talking about all these, you know, this will work because of this. You've got to be aggressive, got to do this, that, and the other. And you know, this is what self-defense is around, right? And I think this video was like filmed sometime in the early to mid 90s. So you look at his class, right? Not a single woman in his class, not a single woman there. All a load of blokes with, you know, I've got to kick, you know, I want to beat the shit out of somebody, you know. It's, you know, I'm an animal, you know. It's like this. It's like, okay,
so
right.
it's okay if he teaches bouncers, right? If he teaches people who are going to be in that environment, not that, you know, the ordinary guy in the office with glasses is the guy who's going to get mugged, right? Not the big guy with the bald head. He isn't going to get mugged, okay? He's going to get stabbed. So he better learn something else. But the guy with the glasses, people will just come up to him, take his chains off him, and take his, you know, his phone off him. He's got to know how to, diffuse the situation. He may not be capable physically of fighting them, but if he is mentally capable of fighting them, there is a chance there, because he's going to obviously understand the opportunity when, the opportunity if. Okay, that's the important thing, if and when. Not necessarily, oh, right, now I'm going to start throwing them to the floor. But if he can run, then that's the best thing for him. Yeah. But, you know, if they can catch him, he can still fight while he's standing up. But once he's down, the guys have got him. Because there's usually more than one, you know.
Like, I mean, I don't sort of disagree with a lot of what Jeff Thompson says in terms of the principles. It's just a lot of the method and delivery, I think, is just, you know, Jesus Christ, you know, if, you know, like I said, if you're a small statured woman or a small guy, you know, Christ's sake, you know, what the hell?
So let's just take you back in time then, perhaps. And this is only assumption, because I've not been in the army. But let's just get in the army, and everyone's going, you know, for the exercises, for everything else. You've got to survive, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and they're pushing and screaming at you and doing all that, and they're building your character, right? They're creating a situation, or they're creating a persona that they expect will survive in that environment, right? That's what Jeff Thompson is doing in that kind of environment. He's trying to create a persona that will, in effect, provide an outcome for his teachings. But if you've got a completely different student, a completely different what should we say, I don't know, makeup, completely different makeup of people, that is not going to work for them. And I'm not suggesting for a second that, you know, them being all nice and polite is going to work either. They have got to change their persona, they have got to have an attitude, but they're not going to be able to lie on the floor with a much bigger individual or more than one individual and fight them off. They're not going to be able to do that. So that's not, for me, which is why, because we're really talking about grappling, it's not for me the be all and end all of, you know, the end of the fight. Yes, they may end up on the floor, but the more skilled they are at running, standing and fighting, the more they're more skilled at using the environment around them. That includes the floor, the weather, the light, the dark. It includes everything on them, the person, whether they've got a pen, whether they've got a, you know, anything. I would never use a knife. More people get stabbed with their own knife than the people they actually stab. So, you know, that's, you know, you cannot get into that situation. You've got to find other weaponry, and that includes hot coffee, includes anything. So you're creating a self-defense kind of attitude, but for people who need the attitude but may not have the physical attributes that someone who goes to, Geoff's class will have. They're not going to survive in that class because they're just not going to meet the requirements to be a bouncer. Now I've seen some tall, thin I've seen women bouncers today, and you know why? Because they don't need to do that, because it's all technology now.
It's
you
technology and diplomacy and it's
yeah,
courses and qualifications, and I get that, because
you can't just punch someone in the face because they didn't, because they argued with you or wouldn't leave. You can't just get your mates and drag them. When I used to go to nightclubs, and that was a while back in the 70s, and I remember going to a nightclub. I went for a 21st birthday, and guess what? The guy whose 21st birthday it was, he was a little tipsy, punched on the nose by this bouncer. He only argued with him. He jumped on top of him, beating the crap out of him on the floor. Then his mates come along and helped him throw him out. It was his frigging party.
Jesus.
That is how, and you just look at it, and I turned around to my girlfriend at the time and I said, I am never going to a nightclub again. That's it. I'm never going to give these people money to do that. Yeah. So, and I've had people who are students who are bouncers, but they have nowhere near that kind of incredible bloody stupidity. It is a danger, and they purposely create violence because they love the idea. Not because they needed to, because they had no other way. And that's the kind of people that used to be employed, and that, I'm afraid, is, with respect to Geoff Thompson, that was his day, that was his environment. And that's the way they used to be. So they're not like that anymore. Bouncers, so don't turn around and say, "Oh, I've been a bouncer," because you can be a little petite girl and be a bouncer today.
Hell yeah,
So,
but that's whenever all these self-defense, new styles and systems are invented, it's invariably the guy starting it. So I'm an ex-bouncer. I've had 20 years experience on the doors. This, that, and the other.
I've been in the army. I've been in the army. Well, you've met people who've been in the army, James.
They're friggin' useless for the most part. Jesus Christ, But listen. What I mean by that is in terms of martial strategy, and I don't mean warfare fighting, because they do. You know what I mean? I'm talking about martial arts.
Well, they got the technology, and there's their strategy. There's their tactics. It's not. They're going to go everything they can to avoid hand to hand.
Yeah, but I remember when I was getting ready to leave that we had a new company sergeant major come in, big guy, and he'd done some Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever. Anyway, he got his black belt or something. I mean, I don't know what the quality was like, but I just remember training with a couple of guys. We were messing around with the judo and that, and I was showing them a bit of Lau. It was mainly kickboxing, because they didn't have a clue about sort of timing and distance and stuff like that. But and I remember one of the guys I was training with telling me, says, the sergeant major, I told him that you do martial arts still, and he said, still does martial arts. This was the company sergeant major. He couldn't fight for a fucking bag of chips. And I was like, Jesus, all right. Because my demeanour is so sort of polite and stuff like that. I get that, and it's like, yeah, fine, fair enough, fine, whatever. You think that, because his idea of martial arts was you have to be a big, tough guy and all the rest of it. And I just
which completely defeats the object of martial arts.
It does, yeah. So it's like when they're good at what they do, but when it comes to martial arts, invariably ex-army people, army people, or doormen, they have a completely different psychology. They have a completely different idea of what it is.
Yeah,
because they rely on their
brawn.
Their brawn. Yeah. And it's really not.
No, it isn't. And when you're older and you can't use that brawn anymore,
what are you going to do?
It's one of the most demeaning things and one of the most painful things to recognise. Age is one of the most painful things to recognise, when you want to throw a kick and you pull your muscle, you try, and you think, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. You know.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a weird one. Listen, can we just finish off by? I just want to talk a bit of syllabus. Now I know we've talked about syllabus. I want to talk a bit about the syllabus. Can we talk about hand blocks 3 and 4? They're essentially the same thing, and I just want to hear your thoughts on what you see people get wrong. You know, I don't want to go too deep into it because you can essentially say it's the same as 1 and 2 to a point. But you know, what do you think, Steve?
yeah, again, once you've learned number 1 and 2, which I said to you in another podcast, that I really believe that is far more about the attacking, and a lot harder to achieve, than number 3 and 4. And so you learn it early because it's harder to do, so you've got longer to train it. When you come to 3 and 4, and they're inward attacks, not defenses, the person is punching, you're striking it's just above his elbow, you're trying to overextend his elbow when you throw the block, if you want to call it a block, but we like to call it a counter-offensive. Okay, so if you create that technique where you're attacking the arm, the tricep, and as you do so you're also pressing it into him, it lifts his shoulder, also makes it very much off balance. If you can press it well into him as you're attacking him with a punch, going forwards, not stepping necessarily, but just simply bringing your body forwards, you have a very good control of him.
So this is the wipe. Willow. We call it willow palm.
Willow waves. Yeah, the willow waves diagonal in the wind.
There you go.
So you're basically you're wiping it. But the idea is to catch is just above his elbow as he's punching. So you need to move.
But for anyone listening who isn't Lau Gar, you might, in Wing Chun they might call it Pak Sao, wipe across, slapping, block, whatever. It's not really, but we can interpret it in many different ways. So you just said there, so obviously it's about the attack, so we've talked about that in 1. Let's just look at
the counter-offensive.
Let's just look at the counter-offensive then.
Well, we talked about how the hand blocks are not necessarily useful in the syllabus earlier, but if you think about them as countermeasures, then they become far more logical and less of a cumbersome, repetitive movement that you feel may not work. But in reality, if you perform them as offensive measures, for instance, someone's trying to do a front kick to you, and in number 5 and 6 you press down, don't you? We just did a video, didn't we? With
I got a good point that someone raised about that. A question about the name of something, but we'll just keep it on topic for now. But go on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we just did a reaction video or whatever with someone who said, oh well, I did it, this is the way I was taught, but I do it this way. In other words, he puts his hands over the top of the other and presses sideways. His elbows are sticking out, which means he has absolutely no strength in that situation, so when a kick comes it's just going to knock his hand straight out of the way. What we're literally doing is pressing with the palms, striking at the first moving element of the kick, which is the knee. So as the knee comes up, you're striking at the thigh with the front hand, covering with the rear hand, and remember the kick will only come up as far as the knee. So the more you knock the thigh down, the lower the knee will go and the lower the kick will go. So it'll never develop into any kind of powerful blow because it has a very limited angle of trajectory. It has a very limited movement because you're literally stopping it at its source. So that's what that is for. So when you turn that movement around and you do the same thing with the arm in number 3, that's exactly what you're doing, but you're just doing it with a single arm. So you're wiping it, and you're striking it with the palm, and as you strike it with the palm, then you can control it. And if you can get close enough to push his elbow against
you're
his
rustling
chest,
again, because you're doing
sorry,
it.
that's me. I'm doing it. So I'm pushing the elbow against my own, his body in effect. You're pushing his own arm against his body, straight across his body. Effectively, if you've got control of that tricep, and
Okay,
bicep in
so
effect.
let's just be
You'll be able to
spec-
lift his shoulder and
Let's-
push
let's-
him backwards and thump him.
Let's be specific about what we're doing, because I've seen this hand block, both 3 and 4, done, where people pick up the punch on the wrist, on the hand, and attempt to do-
that's.
And
well, you
also-
asked me which was the worst part,
Yeah.
the worst mistake. That's the worst mistake.
Right. So we are categorically suggesting that when you pick up this technique, you're aiming to deflect at the elbow. You're aiming to redirect.
Not directly on the elbow. That's going to hurt.
Okay.
It's got to be above the elbow. The reason being that if you it may well work just slightly below the elbow, but if it does, he's got the possibility of bending that elbow and completely deflecting and
But if you
ruining
control the
your
elbow,
technique.
it's a second gate. Then
Control the second gate. Control the above the elbow. You're controlling the second and the third gate. Well, you're controlling all the gates, to be honest with you, because
you just need to move your hand up to control the third.
Yeah. Well, you're literally lift. You can roll it and lift it, and as you lift it, you're then controlling the third gate, which is his shoulder. Now, the thing is, the first gate you don't even have to worry about, because at that point now, when you've got it and you're pressing him, that fist becomes redundant. So it doesn't make any difference. But as I said, if you block below the elbow, right, and particularly at the wrist, all he has to do, even by accident, is bend his arm. When he bends his arm, he ends up with an elbow, first of all, which may not reach you, but it gives him the opportunity to then do a rolling punch. So he can do the elbow and a rolling punch.
He can trap you
and get you twice. You try to block him once before you can get that punch out. He's bong sound it in effect. He can bong sow it with the elbow, and then he can roll the fist. So he can do a lot of things if you're going to block him. And remember, what's the fastest part of that arm when it comes? It's the fist. It's going to be the hardest thing to deflect. The slowest part, right? And the first thing that's moving is the elbow. The same as the knee, right? So let's just imagine people trying to block a knife from the hand. How difficult is that going to be? Trying to stop someone with a knife, by grabbing their wrist, it's an extreme difficult thing to do. But we can.
What you're doing. But in the context of the attack in hand blocks 3 and 4, because of the nature of this, it's a specific attack, right? I mean, let's be fair. It's not just any old punch; it's a specific attack. Now, when we look at, and this is what I'll say, I'll make the connection to competition fighting, right? So, for example, the same movement in number 3 and 4 is basically, it's a parry, isn't it? When we look at competition fighting, we acknowledge that sometimes it's a last resort, meaning that their punch is so fast we can't intercept it above the wrist at the elbow. We're having to intercept it at the very last minute, really close to our face, and divert that fist. Do you understand what I'm saying now? So we've got the science on one side, and we've got a kind of a different interpretation of it, because we're really dealing with a fast technique now.
No, it's not about speed, James, because they can be the same speed. What it's about is purpose now, and also rules. Because if you're in self-defense, you want to end the fight as quick as you can, so you close the gap as quick as you can. If you close the gap in a competition, it's very easy for the referee to assume he's hit you, right? Because he only has to touch you with the hand, right? And that's including the other hand. So if you get close enough for him to hit you with the other hand, or to touch you with that hand, whether you blocked it or not, the referee can suggest it's a technique that's scored. So it's a totally different tactic. You can't utilize the same method of defense in a competition than you would in reality. In reality, he punches, you immediately try to end that fight, close that gap, close off his ability to continue to fight, in effect, throw the punch in his face. In a competition, you want to keep your distance for starters, well out of distance. The punch comes, you're just simply parrying it past you, and then using the long range of your hand to
what
score
I'm saying is, I'm not saying that anything changes. All I'm saying is, because of the speed, right? Say you're fighting an opponent who disguises his punch, and it's a really, really fast punch, right? Will you acknowledge that you're not going to be able to block at the elbow area, triceps, or whatever? You're going to have to wait until it's because you don't see it, so it ends up being so close to your face as a parry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
but
does that fair or not?
Well, the point is that if you're in a competition, your range is going to be totally different anyway.
Right.
Your range is going to be far longer, so you've got to wait for it to arrive. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
But it does spent. It's spent when it gets to you.
Yes.
If your distance is correct,
Yeah.
then you can make it spent.
Yeah.
In other words, it's completely as long as it's going to go.
Yeah.
But in terms of self-defense, you want to act as fast as you possibly
Yeah.
can.
So,
if
yeah.
you're standing much closer to the person, which you will be
In the hand blocks, yeah.
in a reality situation, you're going to be standing a little closer. You may not have your choice. That's why the self-defense. You may not have the choice to stand close to him. He may be talking to you, and then suddenly lifts his arms to throw the punch or to grab you. It works with the grab. Then automatically you bring your arm up, take that elbow, put it across his chest so he can't use it, and you've got the shoulder in control, you've got the hand in control, and you got his face right in front of you. You can headbutt him if you want, but the fact is that you've now got control of that arm, but you have to act
Right. So when
first.
when we're doing the hand block, then number 3 and 4, because that is what we're talking about. I'm sorry I went off on one then, but when we're doing it, we are obviously stepping back. We're consolidating our position. We talked about that before.
I like to talk about consolidation as opposed to stepping back.
Now, a lot of people interpret. I say a lot of people. I've seen it when they interpret the wiping motion as a side-to-side one. So if you look at number 3, you're coming from the left to the right, and it's like you're pushing something to you from left to right.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, they miss out the rotation, and I'm not expecting the beginners to do it the way I'm describing it. I'm expecting black sashes to do it the way I'm describing it. That is to say that yes, it rotates from the off. So wherever it's coming from, it's a wipe, definitely, but not just left to right. As it rotates, it's now going forwards. So it's coming from left to right and rotating to go forwards. So it's a single rotation motion with a linear direction and a rotational direction, which increases its energy, which allows you then to create a strike and to continue that strike forward. You're pushing in effect to make that strike become a press. So effectively what you're doing is stopping the person in his tracks. Imagine someone tries to throw a punch at you and all you're doing is put your hand out against his shoulder, and what happens to that punch? It dissipates immediately. That's what you're doing, but you're doing it after the event. So you're rotating it and dissipating the punch. You don't need to touch the punch. You need to get it where it's in its source. Well, the objective of self-defense is to stop the fight at its source, not to wait for the fight to pursue, to ensue. Because if you're waiting for the fight to ensue, I mean, of course the fight has already started, so I'm not talking about, hitting them first. They actually instigated the movement, and you're responding to the movement. Okay, with a like-minded, attitude, you've got to win. So consequently,
well, you've not got to lose.
Exactly. Well done. So rotate, bang. And there's very little gap in it either. And of course, it doesn't have to be a normal punch, because of course you could be poking them in the eyes, you could be punching them in the throat, slap them around the ear hole. You do anything you want. But of course, as a beginner, when you learn, you're learning wipe on, wipe off, and a punch, and that's basically it. But it is totally different when it's put into perspective, and when you get rid of those big ABC and you start to think about the joined letters, that's when you start to see the techniques start to work. This is what I'm saying to people. This is what I'm saying to people. Stop bloody doing wushu and start thinking about most basic techniques like that will save your life.
Well, it is a very basic thing, but my God, you're going to use that as a countermeasure defensive more than anything.
The most basic things are the things you're going to use, but the only reason you're going to use them is because you've done them,
you've trained
because
them.
You've practiced them. Without that, go do your wushu. It'll look brilliant, I promise you. It'll look brilliant on a mat. Won't look so good in a pub.
Are you saying then in hand block number 3, are we actively pressing on the arm as we've deflected it, struck it, whatever you want to define it as? Are we actually continuing, are we maintaining that touch, that tactile.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
as
He's
we
coming
deliver.
to you, remember?
Yeah.
He's coming to you.
Yes,
So
but
he's using here's his forward motion, yours is consolidation.
Yeah.
You think you're stepping back, but in actual fact, you're just stepping into a fighting stance backwards.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a step back. That is a consolidation of a stance from a normal standing position to a fighting position.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's in a reverse way. In other words, you're tactically withdrawing.
Yeah.
But you're not withdrawing your weaponry. You're only withdrawing your body, your targets. Okay, you're protecting your, your environment with the techniques that are still there. So the fact that you're stepping back, we can look at the body as if it's like your, it's your ammunition dump. You're protecting it, your airfield. You're protecting everything, but your weaponry is still out there.
Yeah.
So as it comes up, people are going to look at this and go, what the bloody hell is he talking about? So yeah, we're using our weaponry, being our hand, to protect and strike.
Yeah.
Initially, that's the supposition that we're going to protect ourselves and strike at the same time. But straight away, of course, we're using the other hand to counter offensive.
I think a lot of people, when they try and get too close with number 3 and 4, like they've wiped off, wiped off. They go to deliver the counter punch. They end up, because it's a flat punch, they end up just getting too close to that person, and their fist ends up being cocked at an awkward angle because they're just too close for a flat punch. So again, I think
it doesn't have to be a flat punch.
No.
Be a straight punch.
Yes, it can be. But what I'm saying is, if we look in the syllabus, right, which is what we're going by, it is a flat punch. So if you stick to the syllabus, then you're going to have to adjust your stance to make a flat punch work. Because most people are too bloody close for a flat punch. They might as well just do a straight punch, which will make
Yeah, I got to tell you, James, if you stick to Janet and Jane books, that's all you're ever going to learn.
And that's what we are about, that absolutely. But like you said, you've got to have a syllabus. You've got to learn to drive. You've got to check your mirrors.
That's Janet and Jane.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Janet and Jim. Janet and John. Janet and John.
I thought it was Biff and Chip.
Janet and John did this. They went up the hill. They did this. They did that. They didn't do the other. But maybe they should have done. Then it would have been 2 lessons in one.
Yeah.
So the simple fact is that you have got to learn the most basic things, credible, that people will understand, because they've been learning flat punch, so they'll do flat punch in those techniques. Okay, but when they start to understand them, like I say, they can do a finger strike, they can do a punch in the throat, they can do a leopard spur, they can do anything they want. So I'm not talking to beginners, because beginners will invariably do that. All I'm saying is, look, beginners, that's how it's going to work for you as you develop it, but you've got to practice it first. Now, if you've practiced it enough, you should be able to do it to make it work. If you're a black sash, why haven't you?
Yeah.
That's it. Why haven't you made it work?
Yeah.
Why aren't you just going, oh yeah, but this would work? And then don't expect the guy to see. The thing is, I'm saying press the arm against him. Now, what happens when beginners learn a punch? They step and punch, then they leave the arm out.
Yeah.
How many times do we see that in a self-defense demonstration where
loads of times,
the guy is offering no resistance, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the whole point of my example is that there cannot be resistance. Not that he's not offering any, but there cannot be, because you're already on him. He's punched. His punch has barely started.
Yeah.
You've rotated his elbow.
Yeah.
You're pressing it against him, even if you hadn't slapped it. You've rotated. You've lifted it up, because your hands come from below. Remember.
Yeah.
So as your hand comes from below, it rotates, presses it against him. Boom! You've hit him twice. Right. One, you've locked his arm against him, not necessarily a shoulder lock or a actual joint lock.
It's just a trap.
I'm saying you've trapped it against him, and you've thrown a punch in his face or a poked in his eyes. There is no resistance. It's difficult for him to resist at that point in time.
Well, if he tries to pull his arm back, if he was resisting, he can't, because you're already on him. Yeah.
You're already going forward now. His arm's against him.
Yeah.
He's trapped. That's the whole point of my message.
Yeah.
Make it work.
Yeah.
Now, don't stand there like a plonker with your fist out, like a beginner. Forgive me, beginners. I don't mean you to be. You're not stupid.
So
you're being taught in the most basic way.
Yeah. So another. Go on. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I've already explained that with the leg as well, with number 6 kick block, number 5 kick block. The kick starts to come, you're attacking, immediately you see that leg move.
Yeah.
Bam, straight on the leg. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, he's going to think, oh, now I'm going to punch, but he wouldn't be punching at the same time because there's no logic in there, there's no energy in it. He would be kicking initially. Okay, if he's throwing a punch, then of course you don't block the bloody leg, do you?
No.
You're blocking the kick, the punch, I should say. So he goes to kick, you see his knee lift, bang, attack the knee, close in. You're consolidating your position. You're not going backwards. Go in with your weapons, that's your hands.
Yeah.
Strike the leg at source and finish it.
Yeah, but you'll use terms like go backwards for ease of communication.
For communication with beginners, step back on the right leg, step back on the left leg. Yes, but I would use for black sashes, consolidate your fighting position from a standing position. Yeah. And that means sinking into it, not necessarily stepping back.
Another thing,
nature, you'll fall back slightly.
Another thing I see people do is they'll pick up the punch. Of course, it's a strike, but forgive how I'm explaining this. They'll pick it up and then they'll guide it down. They'll press it down to deliver a strike.
Yeah, but if you press it down, you're giving the other hand an opportunity.
Okay. But that's what I see. That's what I see people doing.
Yeah. So, what you want is that arm across him. Yeah. If you put that arm across him, it will. If his other hand's on his waist or down there somewhere, even if it's down by his side, or it's in his pocket about to grab a knife, that's why you're poking him in the eye. Yeah. Okay, because if his hand is not there, it's down there somewhere, you can't see it. You've got to finish him.
Is it feasible then, within the realm of the hand block itself, that as we pick it up, as we deflect, as we counter-offensive, we can slightly take our body off at an angle relative to him to make it easier?
You take his body off at an angle.
Yes, it's going off at an angle anyway.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is, instead of you just being sort of fixed, as in moving forward on the spot at this point, is there scope for you to maybe move around to the side a little bit or not?
You don't need to, because what's happening is you're moving him around the side. Yeah. You're turning him by his shoulder, right? Because you've got his arm so high, you can now lift that arm, pressing it against him. Yeah. That will either push him one way or the other, depending on where you're actually. You've consolidated your hold, and so you can either push him one way or you push him the other. But either way, you don't want to push him so far that it reduces the amount of energy coming from your fist or you're poking your eyes. Because if he's going backwards at that time when you're striking, the energy from your punch is going to be lower because it's dissipated because he's going away from it. So what you want is literally you want to be pressing him, banging him at the same time. And so as you press him, he's suddenly locked in a position, trying to figure out a way out. He may try to step back when he realises he's caught. He may try to rotate those arm or that arm. Okay, if he's good at sticky hands or whatever, then
go over the top.
Rotate him round like that. What's he going to do? He's going to drop it down over the top or underneath. He's going to make a big circle. So and he may well be able to do it to your arm. And if you think about sticky hands, elbow to elbow, you're rotating elbow to elbow. And so the one who can get the elbow trapped against the body is the winner. So you can understand where I'm coming from. Okay. I'm not too technical for people.
Well,
it's very difficult to explain the techniques, as we've always said on this podcast, but the worst thing is that you can say this sort of thing to beginners. They'll go back to their instructors and go, he's told me to do it this way, and I'm saying no, not for beginners. Beginners have the most basic principle of training, and listen to your instructor. But what the instructor will do is go, well, it's not like that. But it's often because the instructor's never tried it like that, because they're still doing it like a beginner. So you've really got to make people understand, and this is my mission, is to try to make sure that instructors stop doing the bloody big ABC and start thinking about double writing for once. Because then, as an instructor, you should understand how things can work. And once you've got confidence in that, you can build up a great self-defense repertoire, and with barely any movement whatsoever. Your response is fast because your movements are small, not because you're quick.
Right. Well, listen, I think we're going to sort of we'll finish there. I think on the next one we'll talk about some kick blocks and just work our way up to full kick block or whatever, because we've kind of gone we've gone ahead on the hand blocks, haven't we? Guys, thank you so much for listening to us. I hope we haven't bored you senseless. I really don't, and I'm sure we haven't.
That was a bit technical, that one.
It was.
We're either going to bore people with just chit chat about my history, or we're going to and you know, me bitching. Yeah. Or we're going to bore people with technical stuff, but hopefully we'll get questions on either. Yeah, well, hey, I don't question's care. A question. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us. We really appreciate it. And as ever, if you saw any value in what we talked about today, whatever, please go over to our Facebook, give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on Podbean or whatever. We'd really appreciate that. We just we'd like to have some feedback from yourselves. Obviously, you know, as dirty as you want to make it, but you know, we will bite back if you if you want to be brutally honest with us. We don't mind. But guys, we are, like, seriously, be as honest as you want with us. Send us questions, whatever. You know, we'd appreciate that. You know, all we ask, guys, is don't troll. If you're going to troll, then we'll come and get you like that, because there's nothing worse than people who have not got a reason why they say the things. Like, we don't mind your crap, but you know, if you don't include a why, then we're really sort of, you know. Well, we had an issue, didn't we, a couple of podcasts ago, where we tried to explain how the bloody abbot was you know, corrupt. Yeah. And then we got moaned at because we got the wrong pagoda. It's like, what difference did it make about the pagoda? Exactly. Jesus, it didn't have his name written on it, and if it did, it was in Chinese. I can't read it. But all I knew, it was a modern bloody pagoda. So when you're talking about an abbot who's been corrupt, who's been accused of this, accused of that, and has businesses in 40 different countries, they're not even supposed to have their own name as an abbot. Yeah. Oh, and then someone comes back and says, "Oh, I think you've got the wrong pagoda." Yeah, there you go. Shut up. Shut up, indeed. It's like, Jesus. You missed the point. Exactly. Well, you know, people do miss the point. They can't see the forest for the trees. But, you know, this is our point, guys, you know. But that's what makes it a trolling situation. Yeah. It's because they didn't listen. They wanted to just come across with some kind of information that they felt they were privy to that we weren't. And I got no problem with people who've got more information than me. Most have, to be honest with you. I ain't got a bloody clue. I don't do kung fu. I just am. You know, because that's how I feel. You know, I don't profess to be any master. So bloody argue with me. But if I make sense to you, then at least appreciate it. Yeah. Don't troll and give me another reason. And don't hold back photos of him from 20 years ago. Don't show photographs of my clubs and all the students in my clubs unless I'm in them. Because oh God! And don't carry on the club name after the guy who invented the name has left. My fighting club, my fighting team in Scotland was called the Raptors, right? Just remember that. So people who were maintaining that name, after they you know, left and give a load of bullshit about, you know, this, that, and the other, and then they still try to call they try calling the same name. They're trying to call their team the same name. Half the time they're trying to use the same style name. And then, but they don't want to put my name in there. Oh, I don't know. Me a mention, guys. Give me a mention. Yeah, why not? It's only fair. Feed the old man's ego. Yeah. Feed it. And if you have got something to say, because I really would like to know, you know, their intentions or their, you know, what actually led them to that. They are absolutely welcome to write to me and tell me why, because they never ever did. And every time I asked them, they went, "Well, you know, I don't know." So, you know, no one ever dared say anything. They didn't, because you know why? Because they had no frigging reason. That's why. Right. Greed was the only reason. Yeah. We're bitching again, for God's sake. Let's go. We gotta go. Guys, thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll see you again on the next episode of the Kung Fu Podcast. My name's James Still, and I'm wishing you well. And this is goodbye from me and goodbye from Steve. Yeah, bye. My name's Steve Newby. Yeah, that's a Steve Newby. Just remember it on the photographs. See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I kick your little Beijing ass right now, man. I ain't scared of you. I know you know that little tricky shit. Come on.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu Podcast.
Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it?
No guns.